Oder eine 400. Any questions?
In terms of where we're at. So it is two things to offset, whilst recognising 30 days for our smaller companies that we procure from. It is important with their cash flow. 30 days is paramount, and I do not have a question with that. I'm just thinking whether there's opportunity in larger suppliers where it's not so important to achieve where we're at. So it's just really covering that particular argument off. But I do think this is a good result going forward. And if we can achieve better, but I just want to make sure we're not losing a trick that's best value for this authority.
So it's a good point you've made, actually. So as part of the process for investigating why we're not, or why we weren't achieving 90%, and why we can't achieve 100% payment, one of the reasons that's come back from certainly one of the big departments of the council is that their belief is they don't pay invoices until they're fully assured that they've delivered the goods that they've ordered to the standard they've ordered. And in some cases, you may receive goods in several batches, and they want to make sure that they've received them all before they make payment. So in that situation, that particular department is prioritising best value over the prompt payment. Now, we would probably like to get in a situation where we can try and achieve both, to be honest. Whether that in reality that will actually happen, I don't know, but it's definitely on the radar that we don't want to get into a situation where we're compromising one target to achieve another, which some people will say is a higher priority target. So that's the balance we've got to achieve when we strive to achieve this target.
Right, thank you. Mike, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. As ever, I always have a look at the risk register that we've got, and I think it's very sensible and prudent that Anthony, you've decided that from 24-25 we're not going to include anything on new homes bonus. I think that's really a good move. As ever, we've got the issue with business rates and business reset and whatever, and that will be an issue for us until it's actually decided upon by government, because that will have quite an impact on us financially, whatever the outcome of that will be, which no doubt will not be in our favour. But I think it's particularly good to see that we're ruling out the new homes bonus regime, because I think inevitably that will stop at some stage. So it's prudent that we don't keep writing into the MTFS going forward. Just a couple of observations, Chair. That was all.
Just to build on that, Mike, a product of this council's traditionally very prudent finance or financial accounting, which I know that you were a part of, and then Councillor Spruce, who followed you, and then me, is that we've never built that into the base budget, and I think we've been very much vindicated in not having done that. But it's also a product of the fact that we're in a reasonably stable financial position, not necessarily comfortable, because that's never true in local government, but a product of the fact that we're in the stable financial position that we're in is that actually some of these strategic risks are moving back within the risk envelope. They're moving from the red back into the amber and indeed the green areas of our risk assessment, as we reported to audit last week. And so I think it's a real positive that that's starting to move.
Thank you. I think just one from me at a sort of a macro level. Our residents will see on the news almost on a daily basis at the moment news about local authorities serving 114 notices or going bankrupt, as the tabloids like to refer to it. What they won't see necessarily, unless they're watching tonight, clearly, is the ins and outs of their own local district council's financial health. And I suppose against a backdrop of us investing heavily in a leisure centre, us investing in a cinema, us taking a much more sort of proactive approach to investing in our communities, what would your overall assessment be of our financial health as an organisation at the moment? And maybe that's a question for you and for Anthony as well.
But I'll let Anthony give you his professional assessment of the risk of a Section 114 notice in a moment, because of course that's in his hands. But my assessment is that we remain in a robust and resilient financial position, and that we are open for business, intend to remain open for business, are not exposed to the risks that top tier authorities are or large metros are, and we will continue to deliver for the residents and for businesses in this district for as long as we possibly can.
So I'd probably give a similar assessment that I gave to, I think it was Overview and Scrutiny Committee last week. I don't believe in the short term, based on the budget that we've set before you in the Section 25 report that I have to issue to council as part of that, that this council's in any immediate short term issue. You take the modelling that we've done, and we use the government policy papers, we use expert models to do that. we've got sufficient reserves based on the central projections to get us through to about 28, 29. That's assuming that reform comes in, which is the big risk that Councillor Wilcox mentioned, in the form that the policy papers identified. There is a big uncertainty within this year of a general election, which might lead to a change in government, which might mean that whole direction changes in any case. But I believe we're in quite a stable position. And one of the things I would say is that the money we're using to fund certainly the cinema and the leisure centre is predominantly coming from earmarked reserves that we were going to spend on one thing or another, but we've repurposed. And not spending the money in the current climate isn't a zero-sum game, in my view. If the city centre isn't vibrant, isn't sustainable, the council will lose out financially through rents, business rates, car parking, and therefore not spending the money could be that we lead to a worse position than spending the money, to be honest. So I think it's an attempt to, through place shaping, to create and maintain a vibrant city centre, which is important to both the council and the residents and the community.
Okay, excellent. Rob, I'm going to come back to you then for your recommendations on item number 3.
Thank you, Leader. I move recommendations 2.1 through 2.3 standing in my name.
Great. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Sticking with you, Rob, item number 4, looking forward, the MTFS, Medium-Term Financial Strategy, Revenue and Capital.
Thank you, Leader. This is the final point that, or the final stage that we as a cabinet get to look at the council's emergent budget, and this is the financial strategy going forwards for the next 4 to 5 years. Although primary concern is, of course, on the next financial year as we come forwards. That is the one on which we are legally obliged to set a balanced budget, and on which we will base our projections and the rate of council taxation. So since the last time that you as a cabinet have scrutinised this, we have received confirmation of the local government financial settlement, which I'm pleased to report was virtually exactly where Anthony predicted that it was going to be. And we've also, as of just over a week ago, had a sub-settlement or a further grant of funding from government, of which we think that we're likely to see around about £100,000 of the total additional commitment. What I'm sorry to report is that neither of those settlements are for more than 1 year. And so for the 10th year on the bounce, the finance portfolio holder for this authority has to sit here and say we have very little visibility on our budgets beyond at least year 2. And we are still forecasting wide-ranging financial reform at some point within the period of this budget. And that's likely to be regardless of the outcome of any general election that takes place later this year, because it's virtually certain that something will have to be done about top tiers at some point. We do, however, have before us a robust and ambitious capital programme, which you will see contains forecasts to deliver on the new leisure centre and to commit going forward to the development of the cinema development in the city centre. That also contains within it the commitment that we have to buy out our revenue partners after 2 years after completion, therefore securing full capital control of that asset to do with as we will. You'll also see that therefore increases the effectively the buildings element of our balance sheet by just over 20 million, which again I would suggest places us in a reasonably strong financial position as we go forwards. You'll also see contained within this a robust revenue budget, and it's on that we've particularly taken consultation with other parties, because there have been revenue budget requests made by both opposition parties, which we have acceded to in this budget, and that's to allocate additional funding, particularly to rural developments and to Burntwood, which for a long time has perhaps felt underfunded. We're going to make sure that we use some of the gains that we make elsewhere in the district and invest properly in those areas. And that is again particularly stark in the light of the answer to a question that I think Councillor Booker asked me some councils ago, which did reveal that we were perhaps not investing in some of the rural areas quite as much as we probably should. This budget is the first one that we've produced in a situation of being under no overall control, and that has required a degree of collegiality. I believe it is the case that every ask that's been placed on me that is reasonable and is within our legal powers has been reflected in this, and that goes for both parties. And I sincerely hope that as we come to a budget point, they will recognise that. Certainly at the presentation at council, I hope that members of those parties will recognise the policies that they are bringing forward, that we share the ambition that they have to make this a better council, and we actually intend to do it by building it into our capital programme. There is one particularly acute point that I do need to draw your attention to, and it falls within Appendix G. You'll see it at 1.21, and recommendation, I did make a note. If I just turn to it. Recommendation 2.5. That is a product of Anthony's ongoing risk analysis of our position, and it's a request to increase the minimum level of general reserves by £100,000 to around 2 million, and that's simply to protect ourselves against the worst of any external shocks that we may face. I believe that that's a robust and a proportionate response, and that it's the right thing to do, and so it finds itself in this budget. I'm aware that this is not the point of decision, but it is the point where we as a cabinet can throw the ideas around. I simply ask for any questions before I take the recommendations.
Thanks, Councillor Strachan. I think for me, we've had this paper in various forms 4 times to cabinet, in various forms 4 times to overview and scrutiny, numerous times, as you say, speaking to our colleagues in other political parties, and so I think this really is the culmination of, well, you'll know this far better than I, the culmination of many months worth of work, and it's good to see, I think, particularly that we're still adhering to the principles that we set way back in October 2019, still adhering to those principles now, and are able to bring forward a balanced budget, as you say, in what can be in some other councils an incredibly trying time when a no overall control council seeks to bring forward its budget. I'm really hopeful, as you are, that will come through at full council when we take that there, and we'll be able to pass a meaningful budget for our residents. But let's go to questions. Did I see an indication over here, Andy?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I don't actually have any questions at this point, because I think it's as ever, it's an excellent paper, Anthony. And as you say, Doug, we've been through this a number of times. We discussed with opposition and we discussed ONS. So I think, but I did just want to say that, and probably similar to your words, actually, Doug. I think I just wanted to congratulate Rob and his team, and actually all the other officers in the council, and actually the council in general. We're in a situation here where we're setting a budget, and we're talking about increasing the Band D council tax. Well, I think £5, I think it is, which is if we look at what we've achieved by making that really small increase, we've got the capital projects of the cinema, we've got the new leisure centre, we've got a number of, too many for the listener actually, a number of other sort of leisure and activity facilities that we're adding to the district as a whole. And then on top of that, in terms of the revenue budget, we've taken over the leisure centre, and we've done all that without stopping or declining any of the services that our residents are used to us and expect us to do. And so I think I'd just like and all of that, as you say, Doug, in the context of a no overall control council, where Rob has managed to facilitate a lot of the requests as well, which is great, because it broadens our horizons and what can achieve. So I just want to say I think it's a great budget, and I'm happy to vote for it. Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. Mike.
Thanks, Chair. Just a bit of clarification, if we can. 3.30 talks about the projects that have been removed from the capital programme. There's 4 of them listed there. What's the implications with those SIL grants that have expired, and the 2 Pradley pieces of finance or budgeted monies? Where are all those?
Anthony gave a beautiful answer to this at scrutiny, and I can't quite remember the exact words that he used, so I'm going to invite him to give it to you again.
So on all of them, I think that money effectively will go back into the council's pot and be available to allocate to other projects that come forward in those areas, or with SIL in a wider, because SIL sits with the whole authority, whereas Section 106 can be area specific. So it'll be available for other projects that come forward.
And or even the same projects if people wish to reapply for the exact same project, particularly where they've expired.
No, that's fine. I only ask because, of course, there's a new parish council now at Fradley, and whilst they will be aware of the funding that was there for those projects, I wouldn't like to see the fact that that money has gone back and then they haven't got the opportunity to bid for something else within the community that they need using the funds that are from that. So that's good news. The other one was down at 3.52, where we're looking at the when I get to it, sorry, projected general reserve. So following on from what you said earlier, Anthony, in the fact that we're balanced budget at the moment, and for the short term we're looking fine. Long term, that there may well be difficulties that we don't know about at this moment in time. But am I right in thinking that there will be a funding gap potentially 25, 26, 26, 27? Are we looking at potentially?
So in the modelling I've put before you, the funding gap appears in 26, 27. It could appear in 25, 26. It just depends how quickly a new government decide to implement funding reform. The view in the sector is if the election is, well, if let's say it's in autumn, which is, you know, a lot of people think it's going to be, the settlement comes out in December, there just isn't time to do a robust, sustainable review and get it in for the next financial year. Even if it's in April, May time, it's going to be very tight to do any type of consultation and get it out in a settlement in December. So I think most people in the sector believe that any type of reform, the earliest will be from 26, 27 onwards. But what form that takes, who knows? At the moment, it's based on policy papers that were issued pre-COVID.
I think it's worth also just tying up at this point that that forward-looking projection where it says there's a higher level of uncertainty is because we don't know whether that funding reform is coming down the track, but also that as we put together the projections, we assume very little or no upside on any of the forthcoming projects that we have coming down the road. There is probably a degree of artificiality in that, but it's a mark of the prudence of our budget that's why we plan as we do.
Thank you. Janice.
Thank you very much, Chair. Couple of questions for myself on general reserves increased by 100,000. Is to see where that figure was arrived at. It seems nice and round to go from 1.9 to 2, but there might be some more science behind it than that one. And my second question, the other significant variable that we haven't necessarily mentioned out in this meeting, but certainly is contained in here, is the continued impact of inflation. And we can see that at the moment, the trend is that it's reducing, so there's some pressure and some relief that's being discovered on those. Is that likely to be what we anticipate, and certainly what's reflected in here?
Well, dealing with those in reverse order, the rate of inflation may still be maybe slowing, but it's still inflating. And so it's not that the pressure is going away, it's just not getting as high as quickly. The inflationary pressures on this authority in the last 12 months, I think, were just over £380,000, and we do not recoup that even with an absolutely maximum increase in council tax, or indeed with any increase in fees and charges that it would be proportionate and reasonable for us to impose. And so it's not getting any easier. There are assessments and projections on the impact of inflation within this report. They are, I think, intrinsically linked to the minimum revenue provision. And given that Anthony is the man that made that assessment, I will ask him to speak to you on that one.
So this is one of the areas where we take this through OVN Scrutiny Committee, just to get the view. Whilst it sits in my legal responsibility, I do like to get their view. And it's one of the areas that I think it went up from 1.6 million to 1.9 million. We're recommending a further increase. It's just, I'll be honest, there is an element of round figureness to this, because it's a judgment at the end of the day. Whilst there is a table in the appendix which shows how the 100,000 increase has come about, you tend from instinct to have an idea in your head as to whether a level and whether it needs to increase or not. This particular year, there are some ups and downs in there which increase it. So, for instance, we've removed the outsourcing element of the risk because Freedom no longer operate the leisure centre, it's part of LWMTS, so it doesn't make any sense for us to set aside risk for something that we operate ourselves. But on the flip side of that, we've increased the risk around high risk income streams, so we now retain the leisure centre income. We've got the car parking income, the garden waste income, so these are areas that potentially could have the cost of living and the current environment could have an impact on, so that has gone up to compensate. So whilst we built more into the base budget for inflation, I don't think we need quite as much in the minimum level of reserves. That's another area that's gone down. Collection performance is another one that's gone down as well, because the numbers we're seeing aren't as bad as they maybe should have been, but we've got a more generous council tax scheme as well. So all these factors play into it that come through the year, and then at the end of the year you come up with a judgment based on those factors in your instinct or experience in these areas.
Can you come back? Just to say thank you very much for that comprehensive reply. I think when you're bringing in all the different strands, and especially the support, for example, that's there for council tax, yeah, much appreciated.
Super. Any more? Mike, go on. One more.
So it's a good question, actually. It did come up at audit committee last week. And it came about more from a financial risk point of view, because of the proportion of the budget is funded by investment income. But what we have done is we've reduced the interest rate forecast based on this assessment here, and we've assumed the level of money we've got available to invest also drops down because of spending for leisure centre, cinema, etc., and it drops. So to give you an indication, 24-25, we're talking about an average investment level of about 45 million. It drops down to about 28 million in the later years, at around just over 3%. So that is probably a prudent position, but it doesn't expose us overly to significant drops in investment income. The 3.5% I use in the modelling is for where we use internal borrowing, so it's the income we forego, so it's slightly higher than the numbers here, but that's again from a prudent perspective.
In which case, back to you then, Rob, for your recommendations.
Thank you, Leader. I move recommendations 2.1 through to 2.16, standing in my name.
That was very swiftly done. I thought you were going to read them all out for us.
No.
Okay, we can read through those recommendations very quickly then, just to make sure we understand what we're voting on in terms of the specific recommendations. Once we've had a chance to get through those, all those in favour? Okay, yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Thank you, Anthony. And thank you, everyone. That finishes us for tonight.